Hello, everybody. I'm Bonnie Helper, and you're here at our Investor Insights, or I should say Online Insights, because we don't always just simply host investors. I write the weekly Startup One Step newsletter, and every 2 weeks we host an Online Insights with a guest who always has invaluable information to impart. And I also help founders with their pitch decks, because none of you know how to properly write one, and make introductions to investors where and when appropriate. I want to thank Joseph Katz for hosting us. Just you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure thing. Thanks, Bonnie. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Joseph Katz. I run a little agency that helps companies go from unknown to well-known, basically bringing their products and services to market and growing a business into something that becomes very valuable. So happy to talk with anyone at any time. Thanks, Bonnie, and everyone for joining.
And this week, Keven Hendricks is our guest, and it's taken a while to get him here. He's busy these days because he finds the bad guys online, and he's busy. He's busier than ever. I know other people will show up. Do you want the current participants to introduce themselves? Do you want to tell us about yourself and your background and how you got into this, Keven?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bonnie. So I'm Keven Hendricks. I'm been in law enforcement over 16 years now. I've had the distinguished pleasure of previously serving on two federal agencies, combating cybercrime since 2014. In 2021, I realized that there was a disconnect when it came to specifically the dark web. The dark web in and of itself harbors this stigma. It's part of pop culture, and everybody, probably those who are tuned in today, might have some perception of what it is. And I'm one of the people who could tell you that you need to get very familiar with it, because our younger generations, as well as people that you don't suspect are using it to buy narcotics, are. When I was with the Drug Enforcement Administration, I was seeing countless cases that had a nexus to the dark web, people buying narcotics from the dark web, and unfortunately ODing and dying that were going uninvestigated, mainly because people have the perception that the dark web is something that can't be investigated, that it's all a bunch of anonymous hackers and lead bunkers in Estonia and Latvia beyond the reach of law enforcement. And that is not true. So I founded the Ubivis Project under the precedence of a simple reporting portal per se, because what I found from countless interviews of family members of victims, as well as law enforcement that investigated, was they don't know what to do with information about the dark web. They don't have a way to kind of convey it to anybody, whether there is a disconnect between federal partners in that agency, or whether it's people who just don't know what to do with it. If you go to ic3.gov or any of the other sites that are phenomenal sites the government has set up, there's really not a streamlined area to report a dark web vendor or to report something that had an activity of the dark web. So when I founded the Ubivis Project, it was mainly for narcotics related stuff with the dark web, a way for both civilians and law enforcement to report a vendor. For civilians specifically, the reason I wanted to do that was because on the dark web, or rather, if you are a drug dealer on the dark web, your persona is based on your reviews. How many people claim you're a great vendor, how fast you ship, no different than any other e-commerce venture. And with that being said, dead people can't leave negative reviews. So I was seeing vendors that had 10 5-star reviews that I knew were responsible for 2 overdose deaths. And if you want to look up cases about this, a very good case, I believe Rolling Stone did a very long article about Aaron Shamo and his empire of PharmaMaster. Mr. Shamo is currently doing life sentences in prison. He was responsible for 5 overdose deaths, but probably a lot more. Another case, if you want to look it up, that I was personally involved with was an individual, Mr. Medina out of Arizona, who ran the dark web vending profile of Ghost 831. He was responsible for more overdose deaths. I think he had about 7, but we were only able to hit him with 3 to put him in prison for a significant amount of time. And that case was actually pursued because a local police department in Oregon, and I know I have someone tuned in here from Oregon. It was Gresham, Oregon. I don't know how far you are from Gresham, Oregon, but a local police officer called me about this, and I was able to put him in touch with the investigators out of Arizona that were working this case. And I don't think they were able to actually stick the overdose death in Oregon onto this guy, but it was still just a symptom of a much larger problem of these vendors that are responsible for countless overdoses. So when I founded the Ubivis Project, I was working with C-Right. I'm still working with them. They really set up the infrastructure for the reporting. They set up everything for me. And since the site's gone live, I've had 6 cases that I've been able to intake and get actively worked by law enforcement. If you go to the site and I put the link in there, you can see that I have what's called the overdose map, which is visible to everybody. And the way that that gets populated, and I'm still working on it because I'm talking about like scraping the data myself and putting it in there. But I want to get that more or less better off than it is now. It's just a lot of minimal information on there. But anytime somebody reports an overdose death, specifically a law enforcement person, then they have that moniker, I put it on there. One of those that recently came in with the past year was Captain Obvi. He was a vendor who has since passed away himself. He overdosed and died, but he was responsible for a death in Bedford Hills, New York. And that was a completely organic submission from somebody who had seen me speak at a conference, saw my law enforcement partner that saw me speak at a conference, saw my site and actually reported to it. And I was able to get that case working. Another case was a mother in Arizona, in a small town outside of Flagstaff, who reached out to me because her son OD'd and died and the local police closed the case out. She believed that the dark web was responsible for it. She reached out to me. I wound up putting her in touch with the FBI Phoenix division, DEA Phoenix division, and they were actually able to open a case and find some very good information to help further who sold the drugs to her deceased son. It's, I want to say that what I do mainly is directed for law enforcement, because I feel that law enforcement, me being a member myself and me being able to see a disconnect that's there between the state, the local guys that are responding to these overdose deaths and not conveying information just simply because they don't know how. But in terms of anonymity, people who submit things anonymously, I had one case where I believe it was another vendor that was mad at someone else that was selling the same product as him, and reported that person had a little bit of more information to submit there, had their Telegram handle, has other things that could help identify this person in the real world. And they were actually recently arrested over the past 4 months as part of a national operation that the federal partners were working. They were able to round this guy up. So, I mean, the use case scenarios are there. It's just, it literally is me working this site. It's information that comes to me. And whenever anything comes in for me, I find these people on the dark web. I find the markets, forums, et cetera, that they are active on. I do a little bit of my own open source intelligence research on them to find their presence in the real world. You would honestly be surprised how very unsophisticated these actors are. We think anybody that's on the dark web in some way, shape, or form has some sort of computing skills, and that is completely not true. You would be surprised how many people are very overt about who they are on the dark web to find them in the real world. So that's something that I do, and there's no shortage of these bad guys out there. And there's no shortage of people that are making a lot of money every single week just doing contraband, illicit sales, everything from fake money to pressed oxycodone that are killing people. It's all there on the dark web. So if anything I want you to take away from today, just sitting here, is that the dark web is a very big problem. It's not something that's just a little niche thing for people that are a little bit skilled with computers. Not the case at all. That being said, I'm not one of these authoritarian internet people that think the dark web shouldn't exist. It should, 100%, about internet freedom. I'm a very big proponent of that. If you see what's been going on in the countries of conflict, like Ukraine, Russia, Iran, other countries, these people need the dark web to simply convey information. These people need the dark web to circumvent internet censorship and the government's control of what they can and cannot view. So that's something very important. And I don't want you to also think the dark web's all bad, because it's not. This is basically a very small fiefdom of the dark web that is dedicated to this stuff. And there really isn't enough people that are paying attention. There really isn't enough people that are combating this, I feel, the right way. And when we talk about child exploitation, when we talk about things like that, We have the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That's a phenomenal intake of information that they disseminate. Internet crimes against children task forces that are all across the country, as well as private sector partners like just thinking of the one that's in the news now, Operation Underground Railroad, what they do for human trafficking, as well as the exploiting of children. But you also have Thorn. You also have these private sector companies that are doing a lot of good headway into combating online exploitation of children. But if you look for the dark web, there is literally zero when it comes to drugs. There's nobody that's sitting out there on their soapboxes like me talking about how big of a problem it is. And I really believe if there was 1/3 of the effort that the exploitation of children has with combating these online predators and things, if we had 1/3 of that effort looking at the dark web and the vendors that way, it wouldn't be bad. This isn't something that, this isn't something we could elect our way out of. This isn't something that's going to be fixed by people down in DC unless we start to really address the problem. And if you look at the government's response to the fentanyl crisis, you have many talking heads that say, oh, it's the border problem, it's the border problem. Well, no, the border is just one factor of the problem. The only, I feel, elected officials that really addressed this the correct way were Senators Capito and Klobuchar, who authored a letter to the heads of the DOJ, heads of the DHS, et cetera, asking what the government was doing about combating fentanyl on the dark web. And there really wasn't much after that open letter back in November of 2022. And the, I guess, the way that we are combating fentanyl and things of that nature, it's not really, the dark web doesn't really get mentioned a lot. It is and it's a method of conveyance and method of delivery for a lot of the overdose deaths that we are seeing related to fentanyl and opioid synthetics. So I really appreciate you all tuning in today. And if anything, if you want to shoot me a line or you know anything, please just send me an email. I will get back to you. And I'm here for questions, whatever you got.
I got a quick question.
Sure.
Maybe take us back a quick second. I know, Bonnie, you want to go around the room and give everyone a chance to introduce.
Oh, sure.
But could you just maybe describe, this mystique around the dark web? Like, how do you find it? Where is it?
Yeah.
What does that actually really mean? Like, you go online to Google and type in dark web or something?
Yeah. No, 100%. So the dark web is made up of various dark nets, and it's not any different than the internet that we are on right now, right? We're on quintessentially what's part of the deep web. You can't just Google this webinar and come right across where we're at right now. The clear web, and I'm sure you've seen some of these iceberg memes or something, where the clear web's 5% of the internet, 90% of the internet is the dark web, and then right there on the bottom, the other 5% is the deep web's here, and then on the bottom is the dark web. The dark web is quintessentially different dark nets. The most popular dark net browser out there is Tor, the Onion router. It's been around since 1995. Most people who are using the dark web, and this is the lay user, this is Tor. They're going to be using the Tor browser. Torproject.org, they're phenomenal people. Again, when you talk about the altruistic core as to why these dark nets exist, they're really the ones that are on the forefront of getting the internet available, uncensored internet available to countries across the world. Then the one that's really been on the rise, and it's been around for over 22 years, is the Invisible Internet Project, I2P. Very different in terms of how it routes your traffic, but get i2p.net. I'm a big I2P supporter. I also have been using it since I came across it in a child exploitation investigation since 2015. And then you have something that's called Freenet. Freenet's more about file sharing, and if anyone's versed in here with Internet Protocol, File Transfer Protocol, FTP, like that's really what it's about, is the sharing of files versus sites being hosted like Tor and I2P is about. And there's all different types of darknets that are on the rise right now. And again, these aren't bad, but you have LokiNet, which is built on the cryptocurrency Oxens blockchain. optf.ngo is the Oxen Privacy Tech Foundation. They're based out of Australia. They run the end-to-end encryption app messaging service Session on the same blockchain. So it's really, if you're interested in crypto, and that's how Bonnie came to see me the first time, was on a diffuse cryptocurrency talk where I talked about how cryptocurrency is part of the illicit market of the underworld. I'm interested heavily in crypto. I'm interested in Web3. Like, these are really the precursors of these networks that are out there. You also have what's called ZeroNet. It's built on the Bitcoin blockchain. ZeroNet is a kind of a pseudonymous darknet because it actually uses Tor as part of its relay infrastructure. But after January 6th of 2021, there were a lot of people that started to communicate on Zero Talk, which quintessentially is like 4chan or 8chan. But it's a lot. You'll find a lot of racially motivated, violent content on there. You'll find a lot of very bad language on there, people who feel certain ways about certain races, religions, et cetera, et cetera. Find a lot of conspiracies out there too on Zero Talk. One of the new darknets that I actually started to get do some big research on, and it's not really a darknet. It's kind of it's kind of like Freenet, where it's built about peer-to-peer file sharing, but IPFS, which is the Interplanetary File System. IPFS is on the rise, with people sharing all types of content, from child pornography to stolen credentials, PII, stuff like that. And then there's these like mesh nets, which are same thing, peer-to-peer, but you have Gemini, you have Yggdrasil. That's the correct pronunciation of it because it's Norse, but Yggdrasil is another mesh net that's out there. And these are all going to start, in my opinion, start getting more common, more usership as Web3 becomes a reality. When we have more of these blockchain domain name hosting services and blockchain domain servers and things of that nature, you're going to have more of these pseudonymous dark nets, as well as mesh nets and traditional dark nets that are going to be coming out. So in the I hope that wasn't too complicated, but pretty much the base Cliff Notes version. It's no different than the internet that we are on now. It's just a variance in how those sites are hosted and what browser you need to get to them. And if you remember, I think it was a few years ago, there was a contention with the CEO of Mozilla Firefox. Like, certain sites had issue with Mozilla as a whole, and if you tried to go to that site using Mozilla, it detected your browser and said you can't come in, use Google Chrome or use Explorer, Edge, whatever. It's kind of the same thing. It just needs to see what browser you're using, how your traffic is routed into that network, and how those sites are hosted. And that's it. And you know, Tor obviously is the one that is the most used. You could probably go on Tor right now. If you've never heard of it, you could download the browser while I speak on here and just connect to Tor and start going to whatever sites you want. They'll end in .onion domains as opposed to .com, .net, .org. .onion is exclusive to the Tor network. And I2P sites are .I2P. They're called EAP sites. Sites on Freenet are called free sites. So yeah.
Really, the dark web is multiple sort of
Dark nets. Yeah. And again, it's not all bad whatsoever. And I don't want to give that impression. You know, one of the sites I tell people to go to is a site that's on every single darknet out there called Bible for You. And it's literally somebody who transcribed the Bible to be hosted on these different darknets. And when you think about it, it's like in certain countries, that's a reality. You have to go to the darknets if you want to read a Bible verse, right? Or, you know, and that's something I think we take for granted in our country specifically, is we have a lot of internet freedom here. You know, if I want to read the Quran online, if I want to read whatever Holy Scripture online, I could do it very easily. In certain countries, you can't. And because of that, that's why these dark nets exist at their altruistic core. But again, you know, when you talk about unregulation, things of that nature, there's going to be that criminal element that comes in. And that's no different than cryptocurrency too. It's like, I'm a big proponent of cryptocurrency, but I won't be naive to tell you that most people who were using it before 2012, 2013 and 14 were using it for no good. It's only recently, within the past couple of years, that it became really this investment catalyst, this zeitgeist of wanting to get rich really quick. So I'll just tell you that in terms of people that are using the dark web for bad purposes, specifically here in the United States, it's a lot higher than we give it credit for. And we have this perception that these hooded hackers running terminal screens, proficient in Linux, Golang, and whatever other scripting that you want are doing this. No, it's not. For example, you can download the Tor browser from the Google Play Store and start going on your phone. That wasn't a reality for Tor up until the past couple of years. So now you have people that are using Tor and different darknets on their phones. And if you think about it, you know, that's a complete curveball to our traditional sense of who's using the dark web. We think of it as a computer. We think of them in, you know, the parents' basement or wherever you think that they're doing it. Kids are doing it on their phones, and kids are ordering drugs on their phones and having them shipped to their house, no different than any other e-commerce that comes to the house. And that's something too that I put on the Ubivis Project is like, look, as a parent, you should maybe sign up for informed delivery on what's coming to your house. And Postal Service will send you, hey, these packages are coming. And today it's no different than commingling with any other Amazon package that, like, you could drive by any house and you'll see 4 packages or something on the porch. And these kids are smart. They know how to commingle it with regular e-commerce. And I know one case personally where the kid, literally the package came, kid bought it in the mail, went upstairs, opened it, took one of the pills and died. And the parents had no clue. And the package was actually addressed to his parents. So it was like he thought maybe if the parents saw it and it was addressed to him, they would go, oh, what do you get? Where's this package from? And this was a 14-year-old kid, but he had it addressed to his parents. So, you know, having informed delivery, just seeing what's coming, and you would be surprised how many, you know, it's not to say it's any way, shape, or form negligent on the parents, but you would be surprised how many parents, when you tell them like, oh, your kid's on the dark web and they're buying drugs, and they'll be like, they had no clue. They thought they were gaming, playing Minecraft, playing Fortnite. And it's like, no, they were ordering drugs on the dark web. And raising awareness to that is really the most important component, because there is this belief that the drugs are safer. They think like, oh, well, it's safer to order drugs on the dark web than it is for me to go to the street corner and buy drugs. So it's like, no, it's not. It's probably the same risk of the content that you were getting. Physical safety, yeah, I'm not going to get robbed. A hooded hacker is not going to hop out of my computer and beat me up and steal my money. But in terms of the actual product that you're getting, a lot of these street vendors are making profits by doing this. They're ordering in bulk on the dark web where it's cheaper because there's competition in the market. And then they're cornering their local market, selling the drugs at whatever price they want. So there is really no difference in terms of what you're getting.
Bonnie, you want to do intros, right?
Oh yeah, I'll do intro. Wow, this is just fascinating. I've never been on the dark web, and I have a lot of friends who are white hat hackers, and they're like, "Stay off, don't go there."
No. Let me tell you something. I hate that. I encourage you to go on it. I encourage you to be familiar with it. That you know, going on it is the first step to breaking those stigmas of seeing what's actually on there. You know, the white hat hackers are telling you to stay off it. You're talking about these darknets are designed for people to get around state government censorship, to hide who these people are. So if the GRU in Russia isn't able to detect somebody that's using the Tor browser per se, what makes you think if you log on it that these hooded hackers are going to find you and blow up your computer right away? It's not the case. Like I say, please go. And there are ways to in proxy into these services. Then you don't have to download the browsers. You don't have to do anything. It's basically using a web-based proxy into the service so you could traverse the websites without actually going on the dark web.
You need to do a little tutorial.
Here.
Do you have one?
Yeah, I'll tell you to
I-
go on it right now. So go to i2phighs.me and just go there and then type in this site.
This is all fascinating and informative and instructive.
And just type in that site, not Bob. Not Bob's one of the developers of I2P. he's an interesting guy. He actually communicates with me because I promote his site, like stuff like this. But just go in there and type in HTTP, not HTTPS, because it's not secure protocol, because you're secured when you're within the network. But on i2phides.me, that's your in proxy right into the I2P network. So that's one of the things I tell people to do who said, "Oh, I've been doing dark web investigations since 2017. I know everything about the dark web," but they've never been on I2P because it's like, I don't think I need to be on I2P. It's like, no, you do have to traverse these different darknets. You have to understand. And up until about a few months ago, I had no clue what Gemini was. I was like, what is Gemini? What is Gemini? And I saw more people talking about it, more people talking about it. And yeah, I found out what Gemini was. I found out what Yggdrasil was, which is just a different like mesh nets. Like it's not quintessentially a dark net, but it's like peer-to-peer anonymity. So it's a little different.
Okay, I'll try this one first. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Brian, introduce yourself. And I know you wanted to speak to Kevin privately, but
I'm gonna keep mine short. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called EDU Rain. We build official one-stop shop off-campus housing software for colleges across the world. Landlords and managers pay to be a part of it, and we have like a college renters guide that it's like a learning management tool meets affiliate marketplace, meets like TurboTax for off-campus housing for students to use. It's white labeled for the school. It's available globally and locally. Globally, edurain.org, white labeled for the school with their edu web address. And that's it. I just put my stuff in the chat, our LinkedIn, and we're recently featured in Yahoo Finance last week.
oh, congratulations.
Awesome.
Ian.
Hi, everybody. Ian Garmez in Toronto. I am the Canadian rep for Virtual Film School. We are an online film school, mostly marketing in Asia at the moment, but soon in the US. And so we have a team of instructors with film industry experience who provide, very high-end instruction in how to create short videos. And that's what we do. I'll put my info in the chat.
Thank you. Janice. Oh, you're muted right now. There you go.
Good morning, everyone. Kevin, I'm Janice Shokrian, and I am the founder and CEO of Tausi Brands. I reinvented the pillowcase. It's a very soft subject for this heavy discussion today. But if anybody's browsing the dark web, they can be really comfortable with Tausi for lumbar support or head and neck support. And so I'm e-commerce and yeah, I will sell. I don't think I'd sell to everybody. I have to say, the child pornography really gets me, and the I-5 corridor here on the West Coast is ubiquitous with terrible, tragic, and I it's touched my life. And so, thank you for what you're doing.
Yes, we do. John.
Hey, Kevin, we need to connect as well offline. I'll drop you a note. So I have a founder of a company that's private learning communities, and those are instantly spun up and they're branded to whoever the folks are. They're sold as subscription services, and we have a variety of verticals that we serve. One of them is a 30-year veteran of the cyber division at FBI, and Scott Augenbaum, and he's done a lot of direct outreach to a wide variety of folks, children, families, employers, et cetera, about the challenges of cybercrime. So as we all know, the biggest problem with detection is education, helping people understand what's actually going on, giving them the accurate information, and then a place to go to report what they've experienced or suspect. So I think you could be a great off-ramp to a lot of what this particular client of ours is doing. We serve a variety of verticals. The challenge I had was I started this company because I was in the very beginning doing child sex abuse investigations, state and national, and looked for a way to start a child advocacy center, looking for a way to educate more investigators in what could and could not be done, and then how to pursue the growing world of cybercrime and child exploitation. But anyway, turned it into a project, built and tested it. Now we serve a variety of verticals, and we'll be delighted to chat with you about how we could possibly give folks access to you once they've sort of had their eyes and ears tuned as to what the world, what cybercrime can do to them. Thanks.
That's fantastic. Roman.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I mute myself because I'm currently in Bryant Park in New York. So my name is Roman. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm co-founder of Eventi, which is a small startup, European smart startup that solves engagement at events. I'm currently in New York, building my network, and I was looking into some interesting events. That's why I signed up for your event. I didn't notice at the beginning it's a virtual event, but it's really exciting, and I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to help. So, questions, comments? There's always a question. Ian?
Yeah, I have a question.
I knew that.
So in your remarks, you talked about various players that are involved in the drug problem on the dark web, but you didn't mention state actors. Like Anthony Blinken was just in China very recently, and this was a top focus of his, and apparently he didn't get a lot of cooperation. And North Korea and some other countries are also heavily involved in this. So what do you have to say about that aspect of it?
So again, the state-sponsored hacking, the state, like North Korea, most of their influx of cryptocurrency comes through criminal activity. That's well documented across the board, how most of Kim Jong-un's wealth is stolen cryptocurrency and how they're able to subsidize their military and nuclear ventures with it. I just don't feel I'm the best person to comment on that, because what I founded the Ubivis Project for, and my expertise in this arena is mainly the drug nexus of who's buying drugs on the dark web. There's a plethora of things that you could buy on the dark web. There's a plethora of bad actors, ransomware actors, etc., that use the dark web almost for gain with exfiltrated data and things of that nature. I mean, North Korea, in terms of what their citizens can do, no one can really go on the internet there if it's not state. If you're not part of the government, you can't go on the internet there. Same thing with Iran. Iran tends to shut down their internet when people get too rowdy, and that's what they're doing right now. They're heavily throttling the internet to not allow people to see the protests that are going on, that are not allowing people to see the human rights violations and the executions that they're doing for people that are protesting. I just feel, in terms of what you're talking about with these state-sponsored things and these campaigns that take place, I don't think I'm the best person to talk about that. But I will say that the dark web, for all the great purposes that they have, of course, there's going to be bad elements to it. And I think that a better understanding of the different dark nets on the dark web, a better understanding from the general public, as well as law enforcement and other federal partners, is really important. And once we break the stigmas that we have out there about who's using the dark web, about who is profiting from it, and even like the hacker stigma is my biggest gripe. Just thinking of like, oh, there's some sort of level of sophistication what they're doing. A lot of them are not sophisticated. They're really not. There's so many YouTube videos that you could look up about ways to even hack in general. Like, now you don't have to read a book, you could just watch a tutorial on YouTube. And a lot of these people that are actually making profits from either selling the drugs, or even I talk a lot about credit card fraud and PII fraud, and the people that are doing this, it's like they are so not sophisticated, but they know how to do the bare minimum to be successful.
Well, I mean, they're service providers. So that
Yeah.
they essentially are enablers.
Yeah.
Who facilitate less sophisticated people taking advantage of these techniques, right? So there's people making, it's like the picks and shovel
And
concept, you know.
there are so many more services out there now that like virtual private server services that are gearing towards clients that are interested in hosting their sites on darknets. Like Vulture is one of them, and that's not a slight against Vulture at all. They're a very successful VPS company, but they will say like, yep, here's how we do it. And you could talk to them and they'll walk you through how they'll basically take your site and host it on the Tor network, or take your site and host it on I2P. And yeah, I think it's just becoming something that is more part of our internet experience today. It's like the dark web is its own little novelty, and I think people still view it like that, like its own little corner of the internet, and nobody's really bothering with it, and stay off it, or the hooded hackers are gonna hop out of your screen, or the black van's going to pull up and the CIA is going to grab you because you went to a site you shouldn't have seen with the UFO blueprints. Or it's all just it's something where
those do exist, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, you will find anything you want. Now, I promise you that you will find anything you want on the dark web. But there is a lot of self-policing too. There's a lot of dark web actors who, and this is something I've actually written about, how there was a progression of the availability of child pornography on the dark web. And then they kind of policed themselves. And it's like, well, we don't want this child pornography commingled with drugs and buying of guns and things like that. And it was pretty much a case study about this. Was in the early stages of the dark web, there was a service called Freedom Hosting, which I believe accounted for up to 60 to 70% of all the sites that were hosted on Tor. And the person behind Freedom Hosting, Mr. Aaron Marquez, he's doing 30 years in prison now. Basically, he was able to get wrapped up with advertising of child pornography because he knew the services were hosting child pornography and he allowed them to do it on his service. And because of that, he's making money from them by proxy. He's allowing them to advertise, and he's doing 30 years in prison now. It was based out of Dublin. But that really, I feel, was the case where people were like, whoa, like the number one way to get a target on your back is to have some sort of nexus to child exploitation, some sort of nexus to child pornography. And that's not only from federal partners, that's from the bad actors too, who don't like people who are into that. And that's also from the private sector partners like Thorn, Operation Underground Railroad, all these private sector partners that are just looking for this stuff. So, you know, they're pushing that away, and that's what allowed the drug actors, and that's what allowed the other people selling contraband to kind of operate. And it's a very, you know, I view the dark web very much as a living thing. Like, it's something that you have to constantly keep yourself up to date with. You have to constantly keep viewing the trends. Again, like I talked about, up until, you know, a few months ago, I had no clue what Gemini was. I literally was like, what is this? What is this? Why are people saying this? So I had to do my own research, and I found it. And it was like, oh, okay. And then same thing with Yggdrasil. I'm like, what is Yggdrasil? I'm like, I've never heard of that. And I just had to do my research, and I found it. And then you have, and it's unfortunate, but in law enforcement, you know, we're in general, we're slow to change in certain ways. And I think part of the improper training that's out there when it comes to this are these investigators who I don't even think have turned on a computer in 7 years, but they're coming out there and they're talking about the Silk Road case, going, this was Ross Ulbricht, this was the Silk Road, this is how this case was worked. And that's how you investigate the dark web.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, it's strange because there are so many cybersecurity companies, and yet very few of them seem to be taking on the kinds of issues that you are taking on, from what I've seen. Like, they're all focused on more mundane areas.
Yeah, I mean, look, your info being on the dark web. Oh, we find your info on the dark web. All your info's out there. Like, don't kid yourself. You don't even have to go on the dark web to find your info.
Right.
Dehashed is one of those sites. A bunch of other sites where You can find your info very, very easily, very, very easily. And, you know, I think people kind of sell this false hope about monitoring the dark web. How are you going to monitor the dark web? You monitor certain sites on the dark web. You can't monitor the entirety of the dark web because, one, you don't have some software that's able to simultaneously browse the entirety of these different dark nets. But you'll have a lot of companies that will sell you, hey, we monitor the dark web for your credentials. That's great. But pay, you know, you got to pay extra for that. But for me personally, I say the number one way, and this is, you know, kind of the old school human intelligence way, is be on there, like stay abreast to the trends. In terms of what I tell people in the private sector to do, specifically when it comes to things like credit card fraud and things of that nature, have like a red team, have people that are active on forums like Exploit or XSS or things that are even on the deep web, like have a presence on there to see what these people are doing and to see what they're talking about. Because again, a lot of them are very overt. These aren't people that even come from like an intelligence background with different countries. These are literally criminals that are looking to make money. And there's just so much stigma around who's using the dark web in general that creates this impression that they are somehow more sophisticated than they really are. And I spoke at a payments conference, and I literally showed them. I went on one of the forums, and I took this guy's name who was advertising this, and I found who the guy was in the real, more than likely found who he was in the real world in less than 3 minutes. It's like, here's this name. This is a very interesting name. Oh, here's somebody else that has this name. Here's his Twitter account. It's like, how do you not, but again, especially when it comes to credit card fraud, we view it as a nuisance, right? Oh, someone's got my credit card info. Oh, let me cancel my card. How do you think these people are being so profitable? Because we don't view it in the same respect. If somebody broke into your house and stole your credit card, people would be all over that. The cops would be there, maybe dust for some prints or something like that, and then they'll see that your card was used at a gas station in a neighboring town. They'll go pull the video. They'll all do this. But we don't have that same approach when somebody uses our card, when a carder basically chips our card and creates our card and then goes to use it in a different state. It's like, just cancel the card. But that's how they get away with it. And if you're a criminal, that's kind of the smart thing, right? Am I going to do something where I know I'm going to get caught? Am I going to walk in the front door of a bank and say, everyone stick them up, this is robbery, and take $50,000 out of the vault and get, no, I'm not going to do that. But could I easily socially engineer my way into somebody's Coinbase account, somebody's Binance account, take their credentials and then post them for sale on the dark web and say, hey, if you guys need an avenue for money laundering, here's a KYC compliant account for sale. And I just made a lot of money selling that account. And now I didn't even have to leave my house. So it's like, if you're a criminal, it's like, why am I doing the legwork? Why am I breaking into the bank? Why am I doing that? Like, let me just make money from behind my computer screen.
Right.
That's what they're doing.
Well, I'll give other people a chance.
Yeah, of course.
No, I just wanted to mention that another big site for child sex trafficking is Facebook, which I'm sure you're aware of, Kevin.
Yeah, I have some reservations about what people think too about sex trafficking and things like that. You know, obviously a great case study was Backpage's about what they were doing at the time, what they were knowingly allowing to be used on their site. But with Facebook in general, the marketplace is such a huge conduit for criminal activity. And I know many people who got defrauded through Facebook, and Facebook really didn't do anything, right? Meta did not do anything for them. And it's like, you know, they have the ability to do certain things that they choose not to do. And that's a shame, because really it's not just law enforcement that has to be proactive. Law enforcement by nature is pretty much reactive in terms of somebody comes and reports a crime and then that crime is investigated. But you have this avenue where, okay, Meta could prevent that crime from happening in the first place, right? They could, and they don't. They know when there's anomalous activities with accounts. They can see certain things that are indicative of certain crimes, and they really don't approach it in what I feel is the best way. And I mean, that's a separate discussion for a separate,
Yeah.
we could have a 20-hour webinar about that.
Oh, I know.
But my thing is especially this, homeostasis of private sector and law enforcement working together. And that's the thing I talked about on the webinar where you saw me the first time, Bonnie, was, these exchanges and stuff and the private sector and these over-the-counter services and things of that nature. You guys can see what's going on, like especially with the blockchain. Blockchain is not in any way, shape, or form able to be manipulated. The blockchain doesn't lie. That's what it comes down to. Everything's accounted for in the blockchain, and you can see things, and same things that law enforcement see. It's like you could prevent it from happening or go to law enforcement before these people are defrauded or victimized or things of that nature.
Thank you.
And Kevin, I really appreciate your thoughts on that too, because that's the same battle that our client is working on, Scott. It is this notion of how do you create a neighborhood watch for the internet within small communities, employers or neighborhoods, and that's what Scott's really trying to do. A well-informed public is a force multiplier for law enforcement.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
if you can get them, tuned up on what to look for and how to be suspicious, and then an outlet for their concerns, and then on the law enforcement side, have a receiving ear that can process information that's appropriately packaged by citizens, then you have much higher likelihood that something's going to be investigated, or at least the stats will build to the point where they can add sufficient resources to law enforcement to go after.
Yeah, no, and I think IC3.gov was one of the greatest avenues for that that came along within the past decade or so, because I think they actually started intaking stuff maybe back in late 2008. But with my concept of the Ubivis Project, to this day, as we sit here, if you were just to Google like, dark web reporting or something like that, you might come across some cybersecurity site or something. However, Google hierarchies the results, but there is no other site where it's like, report this vendor.
Right.
There isn't. And I was like, look, why not try it this way first? Maybe, stopransomware.com came around before stopransomware.gov. That was something where they were offering the encryption keys, and they already had people that had negotiated with these ransomware groups. And they, again, a lot of these ransomware actors aren't sophisticated. They're recycling the same decryption keys. So it's like, boom, here we go. Here's an avenue to stop this. And it's just like with these dark web drug guys, it's like things have not changed since the Silk Road went down in 2013. Like there is still no way to actually address this. And whether it's something that really aggravated me was the case I talked about for the grieving mother. She came across a company that said, "Oh, we'll dump your son's phone for $5,000." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" It's like, but she was so desperate, and she had already been told by law enforcement, like, no, it's just another statistic, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's unfortunate because a lot of them don't have the resources to maybe dump a Celebrate phone, or they have to have what I've come across when I've taught and I teach to law enforcement all over the country, is that some of them will say, well, unless there's a criminal investigation, we don't seize evidence to be processed. It's like, then why don't you view overdose deaths as a criminal type investigation, right? They view it as a medical issue. An overdose is a medical event. An overdose is this. It's like, no, like, let's find who's putting the drugs in their hands. And I unfortunately I lost a very close friend to dark web drugs back in 2017. And that case back then, same thing, was just a statistic to add to the body count. And until there's this paradigm shift, I don't think that anything will change. In fact, I think it's going to get worse. And like I talked about, was the accessibility now for the dark web. Yeah.
I'm sorry. A quick question for you, and first a thought and a question. And it's sad that unless the threshold is about $1 million in damage or loss, a lot of federal agencies aren't going to pay attention to any kind of report.
That's that's where I feel the red tape that's set up. Interpol and Europol and these conglomerates were created as a way to combat that, right? Like more often than not, and I'll just use a example of a Nigerian scam, right? A romance scam. The actors in Lagos, Nigeria, the victims here in the United States. I identified the actor in Nigeria. Now, is the United States government, in terms of the United States Attorney's Office, I should say, like you said, the threshold, right? If it's under a specific threshold, they're not gonna pursue it. I go to the state level. Hey, we're not going to pursue it because this guy's never going to get extradited here. They'll be like, look, there's no point. Not going to waste the resources. But this person is also breaking the law in Nigeria. So I forward that information to the EFCC. They're phenomenal. They go after these guys very, very hard. Their Twitter is completely like blown up every time they make an arrest. They put all these people out there. And it's like, will the victim get their funds back? Maybe, maybe not. You know, no, more often than not, that money's cashed out the second the crypto sent, and they go and they buy expensive cars and they do things with it. But in terms of, is that person going to be in cuffs and be held responsible? Yeah, but I have to convey that information to them. So there's kind of this area of criminality that exists where they know how to operate to stay under that threshold, but make enough money and stay beyond the reach of law enforcement.
Yeah.
And again, that's not going to change until there's more of an aggressive approach towards this.
Could you speak to the concept? I think it's fascinating to me, and it's growing all the time, is the concept of mules, people being witting or unwitting mules.
So it's very, the amount of scams that are out there are so robust. And if you were to ask me what I would do, you know, I would start something as a romance scam. I would start it where I convince somebody that I'm a real person. I get them to open up a bank account for me, to say, hey, listen, can you open a bank account for me? I am overseas in a country, X, Y, and Z. I can't open this bank account. Open this account and then wire the money to me. Person does that. Next thing I do is like, hey, my friends are going to be wiring money for me. Can you transfer that money to me? This person has made themselves involved as a mule. They're acting as a mule. And that's probably, in terms of the level of sophistication that these actors exhibit, in terms of ways that they cleanse themselves and launder the money, that's one of the biggest ways. Many romance scams that I saw, they were having the victims open up Coinbase accounts to transfer money to them. And many of them were elderly. And what Coinbase did on in their regard is, anytime somebody is over a specific age, that account automatically gets scrutinized with the transfers. So they'll be like, hey, this 75-year-old woman just opened up a Coinbase account and all of a sudden she's buying $4,000 worth of crypto. What's going on here? Versus if I open up a Coinbase account, like, oh, Keven Hendricks is in his 30s, opens up a Coinbase account. Maybe he's just trying to start his, his investment portfolio. But if it's somebody over the specific age, it's like red flags go off, and then they enhance the scrutiny of those transactions. Coinbase does that. Phenomenal job. Other exchanges don't do that. If they have a 75-year-old open up an account and starts buying $5,000 worth of crypto in a clip, transferring it to outside wallets, they don't even look at that. But
and you can even see this in social media, like people can approach you on LinkedIn, or there's, these WhatsApp networks, people know each other actually, or Telegram networks, like these, how do you say, like malintended people kind of infiltrate or try to reach out to individual members, or, oh, can you transfer just whatever. And I guess if you're a bit more gullible, or you think that, oh, because it's coming from this network I'm in, and I know like the admins, and we're on a friendly basis, like you can just make the mistake. So it's you have to be very careful, I think, with the social media in that regard too. And by chance, it's been an interesting week because I'm not in these sectors, but on Monday I also talked with a gentleman. He's like more asset recovery, working with open and closed sources of like profiles and backgrounds, like especially big M&A deals, like business transactions, and also fraudulent documents, because you can see a lot of these banking guarantees or checks or whatever And I was shocked to hear that he was saying 90% of standby letters of credit are like fraudulent. They don't exist. Like, you know, people talk in huge amounts too. But that was a very high percentage, you know, so I guess that's also where some of these things come around. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's something where there, you know, when you view something as more of a nuisance than an actual crime, or if you view something more as a medical event versus a crime that, you know, homicide that warrants further investigation, it's no surprise that criminals are getting very good at what they do. During COVID, for example, a lot of what we would equate to gang level, street level gang stuff, they were exploiting the PPP loans by simply opening up LLCs, which you can easily do in most states. You just do it online. And they were going to the US government saying, I have 15 employees and I can't make payroll because of COVID. And they were getting money from the US government, and they were able to easily exploit that system. And it's like, when we think of fraud, we don't think of the street level gangs, you know, we don't think of the stuff that happens with the gun violence and the drug dealing on the corner, but they were doing that. So it's like, they're not, you know, the level of fraud that takes place and that has a nexus to other crimes is huge. And the only way to figure that out is to actually view these as crimes, not nuisance things. Like, view them as crimes, see who's behind it, right? Break these fraud rings. I've had people tell me that they have pulled over people or something, and just regular law enforcement, when I teach them, oh, and they had like 16 different credit cards with different people's names on them. Like, okay, and what did you do with it? Oh, we just lodged into evidence, and, you know, we charged them, but we weren't able to charge them with that stolen property because we weren't able to verify who those people were with the credit cards. It's like, what? But it's just so commonplace. It's so commonplace. And again, until, you know, we have this homeostasis of maybe the credit card companies or the banks actively pursuing this, like following up with law enforcement or putting targeting packages together to share with federal partners or things of that, when they could easily identify this stuff and be like, hey, listen, somebody opened up 6 different online banking accounts with us, and they all shared this same IP address that's attributable to this internet service provider. Let me send that to, because all of a sudden everyone in the same house opens up a bank account all within like a few hours of each other, but they're the ones that could see that. Law enforcement can't see that. There's no like alert that
Yeah,
goes
so it's
out.
like the pieces of a puzzle
Yeah.
you need to put together, and then you'll be more efficient. But also, I want to ask you one thing. We talked about the mules, or like the people doing the drugs, but obviously these are potentially very low level people, right? Is it possible, like by tracking or the dark web, or obviously I'm completely ignorant on your subject, but to go to the higher levels, finally the guys, the real guys behind this, that because they can put 100, 200 on the street again. I was again, like in a discussion, they were saying in some of these emerging market countries, the price of a child is $200. It's that low, like, you know, because we touched upon human trafficking too. So, and unfortunately, these people are very easily replaceable. But how is it possible, you know, to kind of cut it from the
Yeah, no, like you said, it's simple. You know, the thread of a sweater, right? In order to unravel the sweater, you have to start pulling on the thread. So, yeah, I would say following these cases, you know, the El Chapo, right? Who's the head of this? You could easily start to work cases like that by following the low hanging fruit and work your way up. One of the things that I feel is a huge component is the blockchains for these different cryptocurrencies. Where is that money going? Where does that money actually get cashed out to fiat currency, whether it's, you know, US dollars or euros or UK pounds, whatever? Where is that being cashed out? Because who's ever cashing that out is a big component here. So if you have 3 Bitcoin go into a specific wallet and then it bounces around to different wallets, and eventually you're able to see it hit an exchange where it's cashed out, who is the person cashing that out? That's the person that you want to focus on. Whoever sent, again, it's the low level fruit working its way up. With the dark web in general, yeah, I think that there's a lot of actionable intelligence that can be pursued by these unsophisticated actors that are very low level. And if you you wind up even just talking to them in law enforcement, you'd be surprised how much information.
I have a
Thank
weird
you.
question. Is AI able to help you in any way? Like, because are these, actors participating with AI to sort of disseminate their message further within the dark web? And as you're training AI, can that be alerted to create almost like a spit you basically a contact list of who's creating?
I mean, I would say that the ability to do that is there. I know that there are some dark web monitoring platforms that are actively using AI for actionable intelligence, but AI in and of itself, it can't think for you, and it can't do things for. It has to be directed on what to do. It's like I love when I watch these YouTube videos about people who create, if Mozart was still alive, here's what he would produce, because they told Chat GPT, here's how you make it. And they told Chat, I'm a musician, so it's like when they tell them this is how the scale has to go, the chromatic scale, and they put it all in there. And AI is able to go, oh, okay, because it's ingested so much information and it's really just regurgitating out the parameters that you put into it, and it creates something. I know, and I'll type in the company right here. I work with them. I've done a lot of webinars with them. They're actively using AI with their dark web monitoring platforms to look for specific contemporaneous intelligence that threat actors are posting. So, for example, if I am a system admin or something, and I run a Fortune 500 company of IT, and I know that there are specific actors that go after the Goldman Sachs credentials, go after things like that. And I could use AI to my advantage to be like, okay, these actors are posting on these Russian speaking forums and they're posting on these dark web forums. And usually from what I've been able to see is that they'll post on these Russian speaking deep web forums first, and then they go on the dark web. And I can put that data into AI, and then AI could go, okay, I'm going to actively look for this because I know where to look. But again, if AI never heard of Gemini, then it's not going to be able to do anything with Gemini. It's not going to be like, oh, maybe I should start looking at it. You have to be the one to program it. You have to be the one to tell it what to do. So that's why I always say, like, look, go on the dark web. Like, don't be afraid of it. Like, don't do stupid things. Like, don't start downloading random programs. You wouldn't do that on the regular internet anyway. Don't do it on the dark web. But just get some familiarity on there. Like, see how it works. Break the stigma. Don't just write it off as something that's never going to have a nexus to your life, because it will. I promise you. But as everyone sits here today, so in some way, shape, or form, the dark web has relevancy to you, whether your information has been posted on there at some way, some point in time, or something like that. The dark web is relevant to you. So go on it, have some fun with it.
Can I ask a practical question?
Yeah.
I took your advice. I downloaded the Tor browser. If I just do a search, like I'm searching in a Chrome browser, is that?
So the Tor browser itself, it's built on the Firefox platform. Tor actually partnered with DuckDuckGo. So if you just start searching, you're actually searching DuckDuckGo. If you want to start searching for specific Tor domains, I think that's the correct one. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Go there and then type in what you're looking for. I believe ahmia.fi is the ahmia, I think.
I just want to experience what's out there. I'm trying to avoid some of the nastiness that you described.
Yeah. So go on ahmia and just start typing in whatever you're looking for. Like, for example, Facebook has its own .onion domain for countries that outlaw Facebook, like China, other countries that don't allow you to log into Facebook. They built that up specifically for a stable way for you to use Tor to log into Facebook. CIA has its own .onion domain. New York Times has its own .onion domain. Free Iran has its own .onion domain. They do this on purpose because they want that interoperability with these darknets, people to browse it very safely and easily. So ahmia, that is a search engine that basically indexes the dark web on I2P as well as Tor. for whatever you're looking for. So that's the crawler that you can use.
So when you see these commercials, we monitor the dark web, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. They're using a service like this?
No, they're probably using some sort of software as a service like Cyber6Skill, or they're probably using something like that. Because very few companies like, LifeLock, for example, they don't have their own tool. Like, they would have to be using other tools. But it's basically using like AI to be like, okay, I have Keven Hendricks' name, I have Keven Hendricks' date of birth, and I have his social security number. Periodically run from the sites that we know to see if anything's popping up on those forums. And in order to actually get in there, I'd have to create some sort of credentials to log into these forums. So with that being said, it's again, I don't like when people say we monitor, and you monitor certain parts of the dark web. You don't monitor the entirety of the dark web, because some of you learned today, there's not just one dark net. There's multiple dark nets out there.
I think Sean was late in arriving. I wanted to give him the opportunity to introduce himself. You're muted right now, but would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Dikshan. I'm the founder of LIPA, which is a technology company. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs, to build their startup ventures. This topic is very interesting to me. Just got off a couple of calls with a person who's looking to build a music video platform, to say the least, that where you can access products and merchandise. But the trick is to figure out how we prevent people from hacking and intruding and hijacking those commercial assets, so to say. So thank you once again, keenly listening to what everyone is saying.
Oh, thank you. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it as well.
Yeah, so the question that I have is, in the light of all the commercialization that will happen with artificial intelligence, as well as dark web or the hacker groups, how do you prevent, or what mechanisms can be put in place to prevent people from hacking and hijacking collateral or marketing work that has been done by advertisers? A little bit related to the pirating of music. Very similarly, you see a music video of Kanye West or Jay-Z or whoever, and they have a pair of Nike, and Nike itself has probably paid for the commercial advertising. But say some third party goes and hijacks the link. How would you go about it? I know it's a broad question, but if there's any thoughts or brainstorming, much appreciated.
Yeah, so that's it would depend on how they're redistributing that. I know a lot of the algorithms that are in place on Facebook and platforms like that to prevent illegal streaming actually are able to detect it based on sound. That's how they do it. And that's why sometimes when you see the illegal streams, they might have changed it to a separate language, or they've changed it where you can't hear the sound, or the sound is so low quality that it's like you almost have to turn your speakers all the way up to hear it. It's because they're doing that to defeat the algorithms that detect it. Yeah, illegal streaming is an extremely robust and profitable market. You don't need to go on the dark web for that at all. But I would say that the mechanisms that are in place are the algorithms that detect the and YouTube does it as well, to detect something that is already copyrighted and being rebroadcast. So it would depend on what platform that they're using to rebroadcast the intellectual property. Very few darknets have the bandwidth to sustain any type of streaming whatsoever. But one of the darknets that I spoke about, LokiNet, built on the Oxen blockchain, they actually do have a 24 streaming internet radio service on there, which is kind of really crazy in my mind, because you're talking about a lot of bandwidth that you would need to do that, but they're able to do it because it's built on the cryptocurrency blockchain, and they're not using the traditional proxy methods and things that would delay it. But yeah, to answer your question, it's the algorithms that detect the sound. That's usually how.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the platforms like Facebook and
Mhm.
YouTube and stuff that they're detecting it via the sound.
Muted, sorry. Next question.
This is really fascinating, and I want to thank you so much.
Yes.
I've got to run, but I really, my mind is blown by, I always wish that people used whoever is doing criminal activity, use their time for something good. And I appreciate what you do, because I can't imagine the amount that you see. So I think, I really appreciate what you do. So thank you so much. And thank you, Bonnie and Joseph. I really appreciate you guys. I'm sorry I have to run, but thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you.
I wanted to ask, I met with a lady, she was with Interpol or Europol, I don't know, a law enforcement agency. And she was telling me, of course, sometimes law enforcement seizes from criminals like money, houses, etc., and sometimes crypto. But of course, the criminals, they don't give them the codes. So they ended up with this huge amount of assets. And there was an idea to do some kind of discount, like, discount financing, right? That like somebody guesses. I mean, the project is twofold. There are genuine people, regular people who actually forgot their keys. And then there are, these kind of huge assets that were seized. And finally, when the technology enables it via quantum computing or something that they could, unlock the real value. But it's a problem or an issue to discuss as well.
Yeah, the self-custody wallets, and if somebody comes in and seizes that wallet without the private key, they're not going to be able to do anything with those assets. Yeah, like I think, like you said, I think we're not too far off from the ability to. I think there was a recent publication about China broadcasting that they've been able to defeat 256 RFA or something. They were able to defeat the standard for RSA tokens. It would be the same thing, it's standard cryptography. There's a private key, and the public key is the wallet. How to see what's in the wallet's the public key, and the private key is what gives you access to the funds to facilitate the transfers. I don't think we're too far off from that. I think probably within the next couple of years, we're going to be able to backdoor ways into seized wallets, which creates a problem too, because if that technology exists, it can be used for bad too. So
I posted a link, which you may see there, which refers to a DOJ case where they were able to crack crypto transfers in the Colonial Pipeline case. So it's not quite as secure as many people believe that it is.
Well, to be fair, that was wallets that they had control of by proxy. It wasn't them quintessentially breaking into a wallet and stealing the funds, because I actually talked about that case when I was talking about ransomware in a environment for law enforcement, where after that happened, people were like, "Oh, Bitcoin is hackable. We shouldn't be doing." It's like, no. That was a wallet that they had control of, that they were able to retrieve the funds from. They didn't do like I was just talking about, any type of backdooring into the wallet.
Yeah, but the point is that it's not as hard to get control of wallets as some people believe.
Oh yeah, no,
because the platforms in which the wallets are held are themselves possibly hackable.
Yes, that's why that's what. Yeah, that's something where I could have another webinar about cryptocurrency, but so self-custody wallets, and then wallets that are on exchanges that are in quintessentially the control of the exchange. They control your wallet. You don't. You just have a profile with them. That's something. That's something to consider.
The other point I wanted to make about the problems with drug problems in the U.S., like opiates in general. We know that there's some very large companies in the U.S., like U.S. companies that are heavily involved in this and have been, found guilty of a number of offenses, but yet have not been, very effectively controlled by federal agencies like Purdue Pharma. How does that factor into what you're talking about?
Most of the stuff you're going to find on the dark web is going to be pharmaceutical stuff. I think, you know, the DEA, FDA, they've done a phenomenal job of really cracking down on the overprescription, which led to the people selling the pharmaceutical grade. Most of, if not everything that you're going to find on the dark web is not pharma. It's pressed. So somebody somewhere created this, created a pill press or bought a pill press, and they're creating their own mixtures, which makes it very dangerous because these aren't labs that they're made in. There's no quality control. You could get 10 pills, 5 would kill you, 3 are the right mixture, and 2 are going to be completely bunk just with fillers. I think that in terms of the way that a lot of stuff that's promoting itself as pharmaceuticals coming in is really from the India pharmacies. There's, you know, there was a very one of my favorite books called Spam Nation by Brian Krebs, where he talks about that, about, you know, spamming and how, you know, spamming really started with these Russian bot companies about promoting Canadian pharmacies and you know, fake Viagra and steroids from the India pharmacies. But I think that like what you talked about with the companies, I think that's kind of divorced from this, because most of what you're finding on the dark web is not in any way, shape, or form pharmaceutical grade. It's not in any way, shape, or form even close to that. But sometimes these actors promote it as such. They're infringing on Merck's intellectual property or pharma's intellectual property, something like that. So yeah, I don't think it has relevancy to that space.
Separate issue. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This is a rabbit hole, I'll tell you that. You can go down this rabbit hole. It's not all roses in here.
The internet has its dark spots, dark places too.
Oh yeah. But this is not tracked, right? So,
But also people can go undercover, right? Like people pretending, like actual law enforcement people pretending to be, you know, dealers or abusers.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I did it for, you know, I did it
Oh,
for a very long time. I teach about how to do it the way that I feel is best. You know, it's just I don't want to say it's an untapped territory, but it's not as law enforcement isn't as proficient as a whole in it as I think they could be. And I think part of the problem is ineffective training. People who, you know, like I said, haven't been on the internet in 7 years. It's like they did a great case back when they were with whatever agency, and then they retire, and then they want to keep making money, keeping themselves relevant. So they go out and they teach, but they teach antiquated techniques. And when you do that, you know, for me, I could tell pretty quickly from people if they're scammers, just because I'm versed in this. Like I could say, hey, this person's a scammer or this person's a cop. Like I'm able to pretty much determine it because they're all really doing the same things really quickly to determine who's real and who's not on the dark web. And because of that,
how do you determine like a cop undercover and a cop that's gone rogue?
Oh well, yeah.
Like where do these lines like blur and get?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that would be a good offline conversation per se, but no, you know, yeah, I would say that there are there are techniques that are very antiquated, and for example, a lot of people who teach in the law enforcement space talk about not using privacy coins, not using Monero or anything else that are anonymity enhanced tokens. And that's what most of the bad actors are gravitating towards. So if I'm trying to really get this person to sell me a lot of product and they only want Monero and I'm just pushing Bitcoin, that's probably not going to work out for me, right? So it's like just that in and of itself, like stay away from the privacy tokens, stay away from Monero because it can't be traced, or if you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. And I mean, if you look up some of my YouTube videos where I did webinars with these companies, it's like I get called a glowy, which is a rather derogatory term, like that means like I glow in the dark, I stick out so much. It's like, no, I'm not a glowy. I went, I'm pretty good at hiding myself on the dark web and conversing with people on the dark web where they don't know I'm in law enforcement. So I would just say that part of it comes down to training, part of it comes down to familiarity, part of it comes down to being able to do this the way that it's being done. And the only way you know how it's being done is to be on there yourself and to figure out what people are doing, what trends are coming about.
Is it being used for weapons and arms and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You could buy a lot of gun, like for the most part, a lot of the traditional heavily traversed darknet markets that don't want guns on there because those will attract law enforcement agencies from all over the world. They're like, yo, keep the guns off here. Like, just buy the drugs that'll kill you. Don't buy the guns that will kill you, right? But yeah, you can buy guns. There's shops and markets. Shops are more like one vendor selling everything on their page, and markets are like eBay, multiple vendors selling. With that being said, you can find what you're looking for very, very quickly. The one thing that is always the scam, though, is the hitman for hire. I do not think in the history of the dark web somebody has ever been killed by a hitman for hire on the dark web. Everyone who hires a hitman on the dark web gets caught because it's the biggest scam out there. I'm telling, no joke. There's never.
I wasn't even. So you're saying there's people out there offering to kill people?
Oh yeah, and there's 9 out of 10 times they're a scammer, or they're law enforcement, or they'll take your money and then report you to law enforcement, and then keep your money.
Movies about this.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a 2020 or not 2020, 48 hours. They did a 2-part series about finding Yuma, this guy who was claiming to be this ultimate hitman on the dark web, and they actually found the guy. It's pretty funny, and he never killed anybody, but he'll take your money, and it's all scammers. It's all.
But I think there have been connections between mass shootings.
Oh no!
On the dark web.
Oh no! And that's something I speak of, like I said, with ZeroNet. Like the people that are racially motivated violent extremists or homegrown violent extremists, like they're very overt, they're very out there. They refer to people who've made previous mass shootings, specifically racially oriented mass shootings, as saints. So if you see somebody who starts saying name like, oh, Saint whoever, Saint Roof, like Dylan Roof, like when you start seeing people that are saying that stuff, it's like red flag. It's like this person's accelerated, this person's going to probably do something bad, and they're very vocal about it. But in terms of somebody actually saying, hey, I'm a hitman, I'm former CIA, I'll make it look like a heart attack, pay me whatever, those guys are all scammers. I'll say that. I'll put my career on it that no one has ever actually been killed by an actual hitman hired on the dark web. It's always been a scam.
A friend of mine wrote a book called Hitman, and it was about the music industry. He got a lot of emails from people looking to hire hitmen, and which he always turned over to law enforcement.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good though.
Do you want to put the link to your YouTube channel? I see you have quite a few videos up there.
No, I mean, if you just, I hate sounding that way because it's braggadocious, but just, Google who I am. You Google that. You'll see a lot of the content that I've put out there, authored and done the YouTube videos about, specifically in this space. And, I'm always available. My email's at the top of the thread. Shoot me a line anytime. And if you ever come across something with the dark web, you have some sort of questions, I will help you out. I'll at minimum, I'll guide you in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So any last remarks or words of wisdom or advice for those of us who might venture onto the dark web for the first time?
All I could say is that, just get familiar with the dark web. If anything, if you support internet freedom, if you support people being able to view any type of content that they want, not contraband content like child pornography, but people wanting to view just the news, right, or things of that nature and not be controlled by the government. Tor Project does a great job. They're one of the good guys in this space, and same thing with OPT. I'll put that in there at NGL. Check out the Oxen Privacy Tech Foundation. They run the Darknet LokiNet as well as the end-to-end encryption service messaging service session. These are people that are on the forefront of really being able to get content to people that are behind extreme authoritarian firewalls like China, like Iran, and even countries like, Turkmenistan and other countries where, the government basically controls everything that you view online. It's important that they're able to communicate with the outside world and see some things out there that could be counter to the narrative the government's telling them. And yeah, that's my 2 cents about it. Don't be afraid of the dark web. It's not all hackers in lead bunkers in Estonia, and it's not all government hackers and state-sponsored cyber criminals. It's not all that.
I need to leave, but great discussion. Thank you again, Kevin,
Fantastic.
Tony, and Joseph, and great football. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And thank you, everybody, for being here and for your questions and comments. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
That was fantastic.